What's up, YouTube? It's your boy JPZ on the keys, and it's too easy for the video today. And we have an oversimplified video, the Falklands MiniWars. I remember I got requests back in the day for this, but we finally doing it now. You know what we should do? If you are a human being, drop a like on the video. You know what I'm saying? Drop a like. Like if you are a human breathing, if you're a human being, if you breathe air, you know what I'm saying? If you have like 2 arms and 2 legs, you know what I'm saying? Hit that like button. You know what I'm saying? Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button too if you're new. You know what I'm saying? If you just coming over here for the first time, you might as well hit that subscribe button. Because I got bad content. You know what I'm saying? Hit that subscribe button.
Hi, English Mariner John Strong. Hi, Anthony Carey, 5th Viscount of Falkland. I would very much like for you to go to Chile and locate the wreck of a Spanish treasure ship for me. Okay. Hey, I found some islands.
Well, that's not
The English were probably
that's not Chile.
not the first to discover the Falklands, but they were the first to write it down. They found it to be cold, wet, and miserable, just like home. So they established a colony in 1765, unaware that the French had also discovered the islands and done the same a year earlier. And for a while the two were unaware of each other's existence, until presumably there was an awkward moment where they ran into each other. Then the Spanish showed up and told the French that a couple hundred years earlier the Pope drew a line on a map and said all of this belongs to Portugal and all of this belongs to Spain, and that the island was in Spain's territory and they would like the French to hand over their settlement. Now since the two were good friends and Spain was willing to pay in cash money, the French obliged, but since they were still a little bitter about the recent 7 Years' War thing, they made sure to warn the Spanish not to let those dirty English on the other side of the island take over. So Spain went over to the English and explained, "Pope, line on map, Spain's island." And the English said, "Yeah, right, this is our island." But the Spanish had more guns, so they kicked them off anyway. But then England threatened to go to war. So Spain went to their friends in France and said, "Hey, it looks like stuff is about to go down. You in on this?" And the French Minister of War said, "Yeah, and we'll launch a full-scale invasion of England and party like it's 1066. But then King Louis XV said, 1, you're insane, and 2, you're fired. Sorry, Spain, we're not ready for a war right now. So Spain had...
See, look, look at that. You know what I'm saying? Look, being smart. You know what I'm saying? Y'all, they being so trigger happy. Look at the King George exercising some control and some restraint. Look at that.
To give the English their settlement back, saying it's still our island, and the English said, "No, it's our island." Then some colonists in North America got a bit rowdy, so the English had to leave their settlement to go focus on that, but they left behind a plaque that said this is totally still our island. So the island was in Spanish hands, but then a French guy, no, not that one, turned on the Spanish, took over most of the country, and
I'm mad they had Napoleon Dynamite though. That's
captured King Ferdinand VII, and in response, the Spanish colonies in South America started vying for independence. So Spain had a little bit on its hands and also had to leave the islands. And for a couple decades, the islands were left uninhabited except for the penguins, some fishermen, and the gauchos, which are basically like cowboys but cooler and Spanisher. A merchant from Hamburg living in the now independent United Provinces of the Rio de la Plata heard about the feral cattle roaming the Falklands and thought it would be a good way to make some money. So he got permission from both Buenos Aires and the British government to set up trade there as a private venture. Some American ships came down and began hunting whales and seals around the islands, and Vernet wasn't too happy about it. So he asked Buenos Aires for some military assistance in defending the islands, but Buenos Aires said, "Meh, do it yourself," gave him some weapons, and appointed him governor of the islands. So he seized the US ships and arrested their crews. In response, 2 things happened. First,
how did he get so much clout though? How did he get so much clout with the government? Where it's like, hey yo, like, can I like go over there and like make that my island? Like that's mine, you feel me? And then they're like, you know what? You might need some help. We gonna give you some guns. You know what I'm saying? And now you're the governor of that island, even though Spain and Britain have already had control over it before. So now it's gonna start an intertwining web containing South America and Europe. This is an intertwining web of confusion.
America came down and said, "Nice settlement you have there. Would be a shame if someone destroyed it." And then they destroyed it. Second, Britain heard Vernet had been appointed governor, meaning the United Provinces, actually now the Argentine Confederation, were officially claiming the islands as theirs. So Britain showed up and said, "Hey, didn't you see our plaque?" And since they had more guns, they kicked them off the island. And the Falklands remained firmly in British hands for the next century. They officially became a crown colony in 1840. Port Stanley became the island's capital in 1845. The cattle hides from the island weren't worth much, so they imported sheep from Britain in 1851. 2 world wars came and went, and all this time the Argentinians never rescinded their claim over the islands. Now it's 1976, and after a couple civil wars, a new brutal military dictatorship sponsored by the US fight against communism has taken control.
Wait, he just skipped another 100 years, so this was like this for till 1970s. Wow.
In Argentina, and by 1981, this guy was in power. The economy had been struggling for a long time, and Galtieri had been unable to improve the situation. Now, if you ever find yourself the brutal military leader of a struggling South American country and you start getting into hot water, here's a bit of advice that has been tried and tested throughout the centuries. Start a war to distract everyone from their misery. Galtieri knew how popular he would be if he could finally take back Argentina's last Malvinas from the occupying British. There had been proposals to cut British military spending, and
that makes sense, though. That makes a lot of sense.
The ice patrol vessel HMS Endurance had been withdrawn from the area, so the Argentinians assumed the British may not even bother doing anything about the invasion. After easily capturing the largely uninhabited South Georgia island, 600 Argentine troops were sent to the Falklands. The small number of Royal Marines and other British forces stationed there put up a small amount of resistance, but in the end had to surrender to the larger Argentine force. Crowds in Argentina celebrated the news, but they were wrong to assume the British would do nothing, because the person in charge of the United Kingdom at the time was this lady. Thatcher was a somewhat controversial prime minister, but whether you loved her or hated her, there was no denying that she was tough.
Okay, so how do my UK people feel about Margaret Thatcher? You know what I'm saying? Drop in the comment section. How do you feel about Margaret Thatcher, my UK people?
Like metal. Iron, for example. She immediately declared an exclusion zone around the islands and organized for a task force of over 100 ships to set sail for the Falklands. The United Nations expressed concern at the Argentine invasion. All South American nations apart from Chile backed Argentina, and since the United States had propped up the Argentine dictatorship, Reagan went to Thatcher and said, "Could you maybe just let them have the islands?" And Thatcher said no.
But was it really that necessary to send a whole brigade of ships to an island that small?
Okay, here, have some weapons. Fighting a war over 8,000 miles from home was a logistical challenge for the British. They requisitioned civilian cruise ships and containers, and they used British-owned Ascension Island as a forward base. By the time they arrived at the Falklands in May, the Argentine forces had had time to entrench themselves. The first task for the British was to gain control of the seas, which they did easily. On the 2nd of May, a British submarine sank an Argentine cruiser. The sinking was controversial, as it occurred outside the British exclusion zone. It was also the largest loss of life in a single incident during the war. And in response, the Argentine Navy withdrew from the islands. The next task for the British was to gain air superiority. While the Argentine Air Force controlled the skies, they were able to inflict considerable damage on the Royal Navy below. Days after the sinking of the General Belgrano, 2 Argentine Super Étendards carried out a raid on the HMS Sheffield and sank it with an Exocet missile. For weeks, the Argentine Air Force would continue to carry out raids and inflict heavy casualties on the Royal Navy, with British Sea Harriers doing their best to take out as many of the Argentine aircraft as they could. While the battle in the skies raged on, San Carlos was chosen as the best landing site for the British ground forces. An SAS raid took out Argentine defenses on Pebble Island, and the HMS Alacrity sailed through Falklands Sound to flush out any Argentine supply ships. The landings began on May 21st, with Argentine aircraft carrying out full-scale raids on the task force
So, what? I'm mad I never heard about this, man. I never heard. There was a whole war off the coast of South America in the 80s that I never heard about. I swear, man, school don't teach you nothing.
ships taking part in the landing, damaging several and sinking a few, but anti-aircraft cannons and sea harriers shot down many of the aircraft in what became a major turning point for air superiority, and a beachhead was successfully formed. Then the ground troops began their movements out of San Carlos, across the north towards Stanley, and south toward the Argentine stronghold at Goose Green. In the following battles, a clear trend emerged. The Argentine conscripts put up a good fight, and with the rough, muddy terrain, the war was by no means easy for the British, but with highly skilled Royal Marine commanders and parachute regiment troops, the British would often find themselves taking on larger numbers of Argentinian soldiers who would still come out victorious with minimal casualties. The 14-hour-long battle for Goose Green commenced on the night of May 28th. The battle ended in a decisive British victory, with over 900 Argentinians surrendering. Then, with 5,000 reinforcements arriving from the 5th Infantry Brigade, the British started preparing for their final assault on Stanley. In a series of hard-fought battles, they took control of the hills and mountains surrounding the town, as the Argentine forces withdrew with British ships shelling their positions from offshore. Utterly surrounded, on the 14th of June, the Argentinians surrendered, and the war was over. The 2-month...
Bro, I'm gonna take... Bro, you know what I noticed, bro? The United States takes a lot, does a lot of things similar to how the British did back in the days. The United States was such a colonizing society. Look at the British here. This is just another example of how they were then. The British wanted to have control over land that was far away from where they were even at. Just like And just like in the North America, well, across the whole Atlantic Ocean, they had control. But now you got Britain all the way down to Chile, all the way down to South America. Control. You had Britain stretching out all the way to Australia and Indonesia, and like Jakarta and all those other islands. You had Britain expanding to India. Like just definitely the United States definitely took after Britain in that way. Like definitely was both of the societies were a very like colonizing way of society. As you know, with the United States with manifest destiny and all that, and the fact that we have U.S. territories and the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico and all that. So, and we have U.S. embassies almost in every foreign country in the world. So, we got to have our reach. You know what I'm saying?
The long war claimed hundreds of lives and left the islands strewn with minefields that still pose a problem to this day. Argentina still claims the islands, but in 2013 a referendum was held and the islanders voted 99.8% in favor of remaining British. Plus, oil was just found near the islands, so the British probably aren't going to give them up anytime soon.
Of course, every time there's oil, that's an instant cash grab. But anyway, thank you again for supporting my channel and all that. Like I seriously did not know that there was a whole war going on near South America in the 80s. Like I actually never only really wars I really had known about in like South America were like the Colombian drug wars and stuff like that. And also even though this is not South America, but like how there was a big war in Mexico in the 90s, in the mid 90s with like the drug cartels and stuff like that. I knew that, but I didn't know about this. So definitely, that's why I like oversimplify, you know what I'm saying? Definitely filling me in on the types of stuff that I didn't know about. Anyway, thank you again for watching. Leave a like, you know what I'm saying? Like I said before, if you're a human being, leave a like on the video. Also hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram, Twitter. I don't really promote my social medias. I probably should. Follow me on Instagram, follow me on Twitter. You know what I'm saying? Email me if you got something to tell me. Follow me on Daily Motion. Check out my Patreon if you want to support me that way. Anyways, thank you. Have a great day. Stay on the grind. I'm out. Peace.